All right. Welcome to the show. Thanks for coming on, Josh. This is the JCS show. I'm excited to have you on. This is episode number 6 for me, so I'm still new to this, but we know each other through work a little bit, and you're always showing up with a lot of energy, and I've followed you on social media, so I know a little bit about what you're doing, and yeah, this has been an exciting episode for me, so thanks for coming on.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me. What's up? What's going on, everybody? My name is Josh Jurkovich. I'm a high performance coach and trainer. And I think we're going to dive into some pretty awesome content today. So I'm excited to see where this goes. I think we're both kind of shoot from the hip people. So we will see where we're going. But I'm so excited, Jake. I'm honored to be number 6 of many, many podcasts that you're going to be creating.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Awesome. So just to get started, I like to set kind of the tone and set the setting for your life. So where are you from? Where were you born? Where'd you grow up?
Good question. So I'm from Northern Michigan originally. I'm one of 7 children in my family, number 5, actually 5 boys and 2 girls. So from Northern Michigan, I ended up, born and raised in Grayling, Michigan. I was there until I was about 19 through community college, went to Central Michigan University after that. And then immediately after graduating with a degree in mechanical engineering, I moved out to Baltimore, Maryland for a sales position. I've basically been in sales and marketing for the past 18 years. So I moved out to Baltimore, Maryland for about a decade. And then 3 years ago, I moved back to around the Metro Detroit area. And then literally 3 days ago, I moved to Florida. Okay. So that's pretty cool. A lot of changes happening in my life right now, but it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, awesome. I'm born and raised in Baltimore, so I'm familiar with a lot of your journey there. And then I don't want to spend too long on your upbringing, but just to dig a little deeper, what were you like as a kid? Like, what were your interests? What was kind of your demeanor? What was it like being the 5th out of 7? Like, kind of, what, I don't know. You're a grown man now. You've kind of spent time reflecting on your childhood. What are like the important nuggets that you think back on that kind of were formative?
Yeah, so I would say, my parents always described me when I was younger. There's a lot of years that are a little bit cloudy for me. But my parents always described me as always the happy-go-lucky, the smiling kid, the one that was always happy with everything. But being in the mix of about 7 kids, 3 boys, right in the middle of the 3 boys that were younger, there was a lot of I think for me, there was a lot of attention seeking and a lot of trying to stick out or stand out in certain ways. I actually think that's what helped me create or become an entrepreneur in the way that I am. I was always tinkering with things. I like to solve problems. I like to work hard. Those values were instilled in me. I've literally been working full time since I was 14 years old because my parents told me at the age of 14, if you want anything or if there's anything that you want in life, you have to go out and get it. You have to go out and work for it because work is the thing that's going to get you these things. We're not just buying them for you. And of course, coming from, I would say, a middle income family with 7 children, you can imagine the financial strain that there is there. So at the end of the day, I kind of also had to work to buy things that I wanted, things that we had in life. But also my parents were extremely, extremely conservative in the point that we didn't have cable television. We didn't have any video games. We didn't have any of those kinds of things. So most of what I did in childhood was go out and play and build forts and hang out with people and be social and just be with my brothers and sisters. I would say when I was younger, the most pivotal event in my life was that when I was 14 years old, the brother that was just ahead of me, his name was Anthony, passed away in a car accident. And that sent me in an interesting direction for the following 15 years of my life, which I'm sure we'll get into. But when you're one of 7 children and that's the middle child in your family, that's a pretty challenging thing to go through for everyone involved in the family, including myself. Excuse me. So from that point on, I just kind of dove into work and school and all of those things. And I think a lot of that really manifests itself even today, that in moments of stress or in moments of, in moments of stress, I tend to lean into work. Work is my comfort zone. Work, personal development, leaning into those things is my comfort zone where I don't find other comforts. Now, obviously, back then I found lots of other comforts, which is a different story. And I'm sure we'll dive into it. But so my brother passed away when I was 14, and I went to high school. That was between my freshman and sophomore year of high school. And it was just a really, really interesting time period in my life. But that's a long story, long way to say where I'm from and where I grew up. Yeah. Sorry for the dog bark. working.
Gotcha. I've got some here, so it's might be coming up on this end at some point too. But yeah, and I want to dig in a little bit more to some of those trials and tribulations, but just to kind of cover the full timeline. So, your professional career, we just kind of dove into your childhood, your roots. But starting 14, you're saying you started working and grinding, and I
was
know
working
you.
in restaurants mostly for about 9 years. I became a kitchen manager at the restaurant I was working in after my brother passed away because we worked there together. And I dove straight into like working all the time. I loved it, and I became really, really good at it. I really, really like to become the best at anything that I'm doing. But I was working in restaurants from the age of 14 until about 22. So if you do the math there, it's 8 years. So I worked my way through college. I paid my way through college. I did all of that. Spent 2 years at community college, originally going into architecture, until the story that I told myself was that I wasn't good at art, or I didn't really like art classes. When I was approaching the engineering degree or the architecture degree, I realized that there was a lot of art classes that I had to take, and I didn't really like the art classes. It just wasn't something that I was that interested in, but I was really interested in everything else. So I ended up moving from community college to university. It was way more economical that way as well, going to community college for 2 years, then university for 4 years. But I would say like the crazy part is I didn't actually work in engineering. So I graduated with my engineering degree in 2009 in Detroit metro area. And this was right around the time that the auto industry had just collapsed. There were thousands and thousands of engineers out of work. And here I was, 2006, they told me, go to school, get a career, or get a degree in this. It's the most secure field. You're pretty much guaranteed to get a job. They told me all that in 2006. 2009 rolls around and there's no jobs. So I took it was kind of devastating to me to go off to college and then after graduating from college, not have a job lined up and have to move back in with my parents back home in small town northern Michigan, which was a place that I never wanted to be. So I basically took the first job I could get, which was a door-to-door sales position with an outsourced company. And I was literally walking door-to-door selling cable and internet to residential people in the Michigan area, Detroit metro area. Fast forward about a month, they realized I had a lot of skills and they moved me to Maryland, which is the reason that I went out there. I went out there with a group of like 8 or 9 people, all to switch from residential to business, still selling phone service, internet, things like that. But that's where I really started to realize that I had a knack and a gift for sales and for communication and for persuasion, if you will. I always tell people, if you ever want to start in sales or get into business or get into a career, go take a job like that, as menial as it might be, as crazy as it might be. It is where you will learn some of the best skills that you have in your life. It tends to always be at the things that don't pay you well.
Yeah, totally. One of my jobs early on was selling DirecTV face-to-face in Costco, DirecTV and internet. So I didn't have to walk.
It might have even been the same company.
Yeah. It was definitely one of those ones that had locations everywhere. I don't even remember what the umbrella company was called, but it was
Sidcore.
No, it wasn't that. It was the one I worked with called right now.
They had a lot of these. Like it was basically a sweatshop multi-level marketing thing where they were promising you that over time you would be able to start your own business and do your own thing, and it was cool. And they sold you all of that, but it was kind of the turning point because one of the ways this company was structured is that they were huge on personal development and personal growth. There was one-on-ones. You would take people out on training. You would have to start gaining these skills and learning these skills in order to become or change your mindset to become a business owner. And through that, I was like, I learned a lot. I didn't even realize at the time how valuable all of that was. But, I went from there to wanting to make a little bit more cash. And I moved to a car warranty company that I was working for called Car Checks. It's not the people that call you on the phone. If anybody's listening to this saying, hey, your car warranty is extended. We had all inbound leads, just so you know, it's people that actually acquired with us. But I worked there for about 2 years. And then I went into the mortgage industry and started like really, really crushing for about 5 or 6 years through different companies and bouncing around from position to position based on what they, who paid more, the teams that I was going to be able to build, et cetera. And I did that until I was about 30 years old, about 7 years ago. Fast forward from there, 7 years ago, I decided I wanted something different because in the mortgage industry, you have to work a lot. You work 10, 15 or 10, 12-hour days. It's really good money, but it wasn't the lifestyle that I wanted to lead. And I knew that there was something more. I wanted to go into business to business again. So at that point, I started job hunting and job searching, and I came across a position with a digital marketing company called Reach Local out in the Baltimore area. And, I started selling their services. Now, I only worked there for about 4 to 6 months because really I was a glorified telemarketer. There was no inbound leads or anything like that. They wanted me to do all the prospecting, all these things as a salesperson, which is fine. But what I did find was the passion that I had for digital marketing and messaging and copywriting and all of those things. So that's what I found, and that's what I discovered there, even though the job itself didn't necessarily work out for me. And after leaving that company, I ended up starting my own digital marketing agency while I pursued a master's degree in digital marketing. So fast forward 7 years, I grew a marketing agency up to almost $1 million a year about two or 3 years ago. And then, here's an interesting lesson that I learned. Be really careful the goals you set. And what I mean by that is you need to really look at what the position looks like, or what it looks like, what your life is going to look like if you achieve that goal, and get really, really clear about what it is. Because when I set the goal, I sat at a conference with Infusionsoft about 4 or 5 years ago, and we were in this training session, and they said, what I want you to do is I want you to write on a piece of paper exactly how much money you want to make in 2 years. And I was like, I didn't know any better. I was just like, I want to make $83,333 a month. Why? Because that's $1 million a year, and that's what my ego wanted at the time. Now, fast forward, and if you look at that, I started working towards that goal. I started working to achieve that goal. But what I didn't realize is that the person who is in that position, running a digital marketing agency, making that amount of money, is not the calendar that I want. It's not the lifestyle that I want. It's not the lifestyle that I wanted to lead. And when I got there, or at least when I got close, I realized, oh crap, this isn't what I want, right? Like, I don't want meetings upon meetings and upon meetings all day, every day, not living in my soul's purpose. And the other side of it too is that when you're doing a marketing agency, you're providing a service for somebody. You're getting paid for that service, right? But that was also an amazing experience, because what I realized is that the majority of the value that I was giving, the majority of what kept my clients on, the majority of what they enjoyed with me were the one-on-one calls that I was doing, because I was doing coaching and training and mindset and messaging and all of these things that I wasn't actually charging somebody for. It's like, yeah, I'll do an SEO program for you for whatever. And then every single call ends up being a personal development coaching call. And I just didn't realize that that was actually my soul's purpose and my soul's intent. And I was hiding behind marketing services, so I didn't have to put myself out there. I didn't have to create a personal brand. I didn't have to be the brand, which is something I coach people on now. I didn't have to be the brand, because I could hide behind the idea that I had all these services and I had all these things, and then I could sit in my freaking house and smoke weed all the time, which is basically what I was doing, and just get on the calls that I needed to do. And it was rather unhealthy. But I mean, I was making okay money. The funny part is I don't make that much revenue anymore, but I still have the same amount of profit and same amount of income. Because when you're running an agency that's making that much, you're paying a lot of people.
Yeah.
So one of the things I train people on, like, that was a journey that I absolutely needed to go through. But one of the things that I train people on is the idea that if you ever decide to move to what I call the meta level is the level above what you're doing right now. It's moving from a producer to a coach or trainer, right? Mm-hmm. So when you're moving to a meta level, a lot of times the best person that we have the ability to influence or persuade is somebody that's dealt with the problems that we've experienced in the past. So when you're looking to become a coach or trainer or mentor, or if you're going to create something like a high ticket offer or something where you know that you can provide massive results on either a one-to-one basis or a one-to-many basis, like the mastermind that I run, the best people for you to do that for are somebody who's gone through the similar or the same hero's journey that you had gone through in the past. What I mean by that is, like, I know what it's like. I know what it's like to be a producer. I know what it's like to work the 12-hour days. I know what it's like for the clock for the bank account or for your pipeline to go to zero every single day, meaning that you don't have any recurring revenue, or you don't have the holy grail of business, which is kind of money coming in without having to work for it. Right. So when you think through like real estate investing, the holy grail is creating properties and owning them and holding them and then turning them into rental properties. So you have cash flow coming in over a long period of time. Mm-hmm. That's the holy grail. But with a marketing agency or with services or things like that, that's the reason that you see people not with marketing agency service, but with like things like mortgage or things like real estate or things like those every time you just have to continue being a producer. You have to continue producing. You have to continue producing. You're not creating anything that's going to create long lasting eternal wealth for you or your family.
So recurring revenue.
So when I was miserable like that a couple of years ago, I set out on a journey to try and start living a balanced lifestyle. And what I mean by a balanced lifestyle is find a way to create the biggest fortune I could for myself and create the most recurring revenue for me over the next several years. Also, to have the most fun that I can have in my life, to have the best family relationships that I have in my life, to have the fittest body that I've ever had in my life. So about 5 or 6 years ago, I became a CrossFit athlete and a CrossFit level 1 trainer. And then to have, like I said, I break it down in 5 categories. Foundation, which is like your mindset, your philosophy, the faith in whatever God you believe in. For me, it was Christianity. So your faith or your foundation and philosophy is one category. Your second category is your fitness, because what's the point of being rich if you don't have a good body to live in, or if you're going to die when you're 50? Your family, so your relationships with yourself and with others, your fortune, and your fun. So if you start to optimize those 5 categories, you can get to a place in your life where you can live a balanced lifestyle, and you have to start working on each one of these areas. So I set on a mission to start doing that. And that's actually one of the things that I coach and train people on now too, because I've done it rather successfully. I'm in the best shape of my life. I have the best business I've ever had. I'm in some of the best relationships. Yes, I had to let some of them go. I was married for 5 years and recently went through a divorce. My foundation, my faith, and my philosophy and things like that, after all the personal development work that I've been doing, I read about 52 books a year. I have since 2016, I think. I keep track of them. It's pretty awesome. And then I'm having a lot of fun. I'm moving around the country, traveling, going to conferences, spending time with high level people. They say that you are the sum of the 5 people that you spend the most time with. And I spend some time with some really awesome people. And it's just like having probably some of the best times in my life right now.
Yeah, I can tell it just from your expressions as you're talking. And what you're saying is interesting. I'm interested by the hero's journey, and I just want you to clarify exactly what you mean on that. You know the book The Alchemist? It's a classic.
Yep.
I'm reading that one right now.
Whatever.
Yeah. It's they call it the personal legend in that book, but I just listening to that one this week, and so it aligns. But yeah, that's when it comes to your hero's journey, and then you mentioned that. You also mentioned that your soul's purpose. When you started doing, you realized you were coaching the whole time, even though under the guise of a marketing agency. And can you just clarify exactly what you mean by hero's journey and soul's purpose, and just kind of talk about the things?
So one of the things, and one of the biggest mistakes I see people make, which this is kind of the summary or the moral of the Alchemist, right, is that in The Alchemist, he's aiming at some fictitious goal. He's aiming to achieve or to retain. I can't remember what it was called, but it was something. I read that book like a year and a half ago, but he was aiming at something. He went on this journey to try and get this thing. And at the very end of the book, spoiler alert, right? Spoiler alert. He didn't get the thing, but the thing was the journey all along, right? So the idea is that we are all on this journey in life. We are all aiming at different goals. We're aiming at different things. But one of the most important things that we can focus on is the journey that we're on and enjoying the path. Right? Because the struggles, the trials, the tribulations that we experience throughout life are all just part of a journey. So one of the things, or one of my favorite books that I've read, similar to that one, is 1,000 Miles in 10,000 Years or something like that. It's by Donald Miller. It's one of his first books before he started doing all the story brand training, which is actually about the hero's journey. But what he talks about is that you are a character in the story of your life. And being a character in the story of your life is you get to decide who that character is, his personality traits, his character traits, how you show up as you're writing your story. So every day that we wake up, or every day that I wake up, is another opportunity, and it's another day to continue writing my story towards whatever it is that I'm aiming at. Now, that's the challenge, right? At the beginning of every story, they're going to set a challenge or a problem or some sort of insurmountable thing that the character in the story, the hero, is trying to accomplish, or something that they're trying to do, right?
Mhm.
And it seems like they have insurmountable odds and tons of obstacles that come against them through this journey. And a lot of times they need a guide or a mentor or something like that that's going to help call them to action and take them to that desired result. And we all have guides, we all have mentors, we all have people in our lives that are going to do that. But one of the most important things is understanding that what we're aiming at is what we're going to achieve, or is what we're going to get, right? So I do a lot of work now in meditation and manifestation and things of that nature, and, you know, effective prayer, right? Basically. And you have to be really careful what you affirm. You have to be really careful what you're manifesting in your life, because whatever it is, you will probably achieve it. So if you tell yourself, I'll never be able to be fit, then you're never going to be able to be fit. It just won't work. But if you say, you know, if you aim at the right things, if you aim at things that are meaningful to you in your life, and you set a reason why you're doing it, that is something that doesn't allow you to fall back on, or that's another point. I'll mention that in a second. I don't want to go on a huge tangent, but you have to set an aim towards a meaningful result, and it needs to be based on a strong why. So to revert to the soul's purpose stuff, my strong why is that I understand that my journey, and that there are people that had gone through or are in a similar place and don't even realize the level of suffering that they're creating for themselves, for their families, for the audiences that they're called to serve, and for just overall the meaning that they have in their life. So one of the things that I help people realize is like, look, there actually is freedom available to you. There is abundance. There is prosperity allowed in this world when you choose to step out into something that's uncomfortable. I think comfort is the enemy of purpose, meaning that we get so comfortable in our sports that we watch. We get so comfortable watching the TV shows and in our routines and the things that whenever we experience discomfort, we think that there's something wrong with it, right? We think that, oh man, this is uncomfortable. I shouldn't be doing this. I'm like, one of my favorite quotes of all time was that life begins at the end of your comfort zone. How can I continue to make myself uncomfortable to the point where eventually that discomfort becomes comfortable, and then I have to expand myself again? You know, like, so when I'm looking at my purpose has always been that it's a simple statement that I use. I went through intensive, some personal development work called a Soul's Purpose Intensive, and I came out with the idea that I'm a warrior called, chosen, and elected to liberate men and women into the abundant kingdom of God. Now, this will get a little theological, and that's fine. Like, I understand some people think different things, and it's totally okay. But one of the things and one of the frameworks is the idea that heaven is a thing, or you could call it enlightenment, you can call it whatever you want, but it's a thing that's available to us right now. We don't have to wait. We don't have to wait till we die. We don't have to wait till some future point. It's something that we can tap into, and something that's available to all right here and right now. And there's a freedom and there's abundance and prosperity available. We just have to know how to tap into it. And the number one way to tap into it was proven by tons of sages, tons of leaders, tons of people over all of time. And it's simple. It's doing the shit you don't want to do when you know that it's good for you consistently over a long period of time. I don't want to go to the gym. I don't want to eat healthy. I want to eat the snack. I want to go out and drink. I want to smoke weed. I want to party. Like, the part that I left out of my story is that from the time my brother passed away till the time that I turned 29, I was all over the place as a party kid in downtown Baltimore City. You're from Baltimore, so you know what it's like. Tons of people going out and drinking, partying. I was making way too much money for somebody that was my age, and I didn't know how to handle it. So I did the only logical thing, which was, go out and party my ass off. Mm-hmm. And there was a turning point in my life when I was 29 that I cut all that shit off, and I chose to go all in on my fitness, go all in on CrossFit, go all in. It's actually when I found Christianity at that time and said, you know what, my life, the way that it is right now, isn't working. Something needs to change, because this isn't my identity. This isn't who I am. Who I am is somebody different than this person that I'm being every day. And I realized something had to change.
And how did you find Christianity? And were you looking for something when you found it, or when did you have, like, what was the order? Did you realize something needed to change and then found Christianity, or did you find it and then were like, oh, did that kind of open your eyes to, like, self-reflection?
Well, so, I mean, let's just say I was in a really, really dark pit at the time. I was in the mortgage industry for a while, and I got to a place where I had built a pretty large mortgage team for somebody, and then I ended up getting fired from that company. And I got fired because, well, I didn't really get fired. I kind of pushed myself out. And what I mean by that is I built a team of about 12 to 15 loan officers doing a shitload of production. And the person that I was working for ended up promoting somebody else into the manager position that I wanted. I look back on this now as a huge gift for me because I'm not the employee or I'm not the manager type of person anyway. And I understand why he did it, but it was devastating to me at the time because I had thought I had been working and working and working and striving and striving and striving to get this position that I didn't end up getting. And it sent me down in a downward spiral of drugs and alcohol for a while that landed me in jail. And while I was in jail for getting way, way, way too drunk and doing a bunch of shit I shouldn't do, it was only for like 2 or 3 days. But I mean, I know it's only 2 or 3 days. That's a pretty crazy thing. But while I was there, I was filled with guilt and shame and struggle and trial. I was in a place where I was like, I was having an identity crisis, basically. And the identity crisis was that, you know, this is something I've never shared publicly, so this is kind of scary for me right now. The identity crisis was that who is this person that I've become? Because it's so disconnected and incongruent with the person that I know myself to be. I had gone so far down the deep end in all of these areas because it's what was comfortable. It's what was easy. I could suppress all my feelings. I could just put it into drugs. I could put it into alcohol. I could put it into whatever. And I was literally standing there crying and having an identity crisis and all of that. And at that moment, I just felt a huge weight on my shoulders and I needed help. And I remembered what my parents had told me about Jesus and all of those kinds of things and about enlightenment, about how the weight can be taken off your shoulders. So I sent up one of those prayers that says, if you're real, show me that you exist and take this weight from me. Take this from me. And that was the exact moment that the sun decided to rise in the morning and is shown through a tiny little window, probably 30 feet from me, directly onto my chest in that cell or in the drunk tank where I was. And immediately a tingling sensation went through my entire body. I heard the voice say, I am real, follow me. And so I did. And that was the point where like I was taking benzodiazepines. I was doing cocaine all the time. I was a really, really crazy person. And I walked out of that place enlightened in a place where I didn't need any of that anymore. So it was a literal come to Jesus moment. There's more of like a come to enlightenment moment that you're having an identity crisis because you're actually not being the person that you know yourself to be, but you can start being that today. You can start being that right now. You just have to change your lifestyle habits. You just have to change things and start working towards it. Now, I like to say that I went through Christianity over the past several years because one of the biggest challenges I run into now is the fact that one of the things that one of the frameworks I really try and live life now is constantly telling the truth in vulnerability and authenticity. And that's why I'm just telling you the truth right now because I don't really care. At the end of the day, there's no scandal possible when you tell the truth, right? And one of the biggest challenges you have in Christianity as a whole is people think that there's this all of a sudden come to Jesus moment and you're saved and you're washed clean and then you have no more sin, you have nothing no more, which is kind of true. But there's still a lot of work that needs to be done after that. That's the entire discipleship principle that I talk about in my coaching, meaning that you have to then become a disciple. You then have to create discipline in your life. You then have to start living the lifestyle of somebody who is that. Right. So I started CrossFit. I started my business. I started all of these different things. But what I didn't realize is when you venture on a hero's journey, because I would say that moment was really the time that it started. That wasn't the end. Right. So when you venture off on a hero's journey, you are going to run into insurmountable trials. You're going to run into insurmountable obstacles. You're going to go through a lot of crap. That's actually what this life is. Right. We're going to, in Buddhism, they talk about this because I don't just study Christianity. I study the Bhagavad Gita, Buddhism, Tao Te Ching, and like a lot of different things from ancient times up until now. And the biggest message in all religion is that life is suffering and that meaning is found in the present moment. And life is found, or positive emotion is found when you make things meaningful. I think one of the biggest reasons following Jesus is so effective for people is that it gives meaning to their lives, right? It gives meaning and something to follow. It gives something to aim at, right? So if you're going to aim at the highest good, Jordan Peterson talks about this, but if you're going to aim at the highest good, why not aim at the person who lived with no sin? And that makes sense, right? So it becomes then trying to find a systematic, scientific way to start getting the results in the different categories of your life, right? Tony Robbins talks about this, and it's not rocket science. It's actually really easy, and it's really hard. Meaning, like, it's easy because we all know what the solution is. We all know what it is that we're supposed to do. But getting ourselves to do it with our little bitch minds and our bitch voices that show up saying, no, man, you don't need to work out today. You don't need to do this thing. You don't need to meditate this morning. You don't need to pray. I know you're busy. It's okay. Go ahead and have a drink. It'll be fine. You worked really hard. And I'm like, well, one of the biggest challenges I ran into, which is probably what caused my divorce and different things like that, is being out of integrity with yourself. The first person you need to be in integrity with is you. And what I mean is when words come out of your mouth that say you're going to do something, or when you write something in your journal, or every year when you write down your New Year's resolutions and then don't do them, you're teaching yourself that you don't do what you're saying. Yeah. You're out of integrity with you. Nobody knows it. Nobody has to deal with that except for you. But when you teach yourself that, you then have that pattern, and then you start, it's a never-ending spiral. You start to realize over time that the more I say I'm going to do, I'm just not going to do it anyway. So what's the point? Or what's the point of writing down goals? I never achieve them. So when I talk about a scientific and systematic way, there's something that I talk to my clients now about. It's an idea called the domino disciplines. So when you look at all 5 of those categories, again, which was your faith, your family, your fitness, your fortune, your fun, a lot of times there's a big domino. There's a big thing that you need to knock down that's going to make everything else easier. And that big thing is what you start working on right now. It's like, I don't know what it is. If you're overweight, maybe it's starting to get a better diet. Maybe it's cutting sugar out of your thing. Maybe it's whatever. What is the smallest step that you can take right now to achieve the results that you want in your life?
Yeah.
And what's that?
There's the fear of constraints with bottlenecks that kind of is that same for business. And then, yeah, exactly. It's what's going to alleviate the pressure. What's the linchpin or the keystone habit, if you know Power of Habit, Charles Duhigg. Yeah. It's
the crazy part is when I talk about these frameworks, or when I talk about the domino disciplines or anything like this, one of the things I discovered is I actually created a framework called the meta frameworks. And after going through 11 different coaching programs and investing a crap load of money in personal development, everything that I've done over the past 6 years, I noticed some patterns, patterns in personal development. And I break them down into 4. Actually, I just added a 5th category today after a conversation with my girlfriend. And I'll walk through them. I call them the meta frameworks, because what it is it's a framework of frameworks. And so when I talk about a framework is a simple alliteration of a complex idea to make it simple for our brains to consume, because complex ideas are going to go in one ear and out the other. So we need to simplify things. It's the reason pastors say ABC, or the ABCs of sales, or whatever the thing is, right? Yeah. You've seen frameworks in every book, everything, every Bible. The 10 Commandments is a framework, right?
Yeah.
So there are meta frameworks.
I did construction.
Exactly.
And so you talk about what the building's going to look like, but once you frame it, it doesn't look anything like the final product, but you can see it. You can, it's there.
Yeah. So when I look at the different personal development programs, I don't remember what your question was exactly, but when I look at what they are, and I've noticed that there's actually 5 categories, not 4. I've been teaching people 4 lately, but I'm excited about the 5th one. So the first one is your mindset framework. Every program, any way that I've seen people get results in their lives is because they have the right mindset and they believe that they can. Now, we have all these internal stories and internal beliefs and crap from our childhood and all kinds of crap that we have to knock down and get out of the way in order to start to achieve the results that we want in life. But the first thing we need to do is we need to get our mind right. Because if my mind doesn't believe that I can do it, or if my mind is messed up or telling myself all these stories, or I'm using doubt words or saying, maybe when I get this, or I kind of laugh at people because not laugh at people, but I laugh sometimes because people will say a prayer and they'll say, well, maybe if it's your will that you'll make me make this so, and it'll happen in my life if you want it to. And I say, thank you so much for the results that I have already achieved in my life. Thank you so much for the $1 billion house that I'm going to have in the future. Thank you so much for providing me this abundance and prosperity. And when you do these types of things, when you have the mindset that what you say and what you do are actually going to create as results in your life, there's a million books I could give you on this, but you need to have your mindset right. So every program that I've seen, anything that gets results in business, personal development, fitness coaching, any type of thing. So yes, it applies to business. Yes, it applies to your life. Yes, it applies to your religion. Yes, it applies to your finances. It applies to every area. You need to have the right mindset. The second one is your journey framework. This is kind of the hero's journey that we're talking about. And that's getting super clear on where you are right now in that area, and then getting super clear on where you want to go, right? It's goal setting. A lot of things and a lot of works and tons of books have been written about how to set goals. So how do I set my goal for today? How do I get really, really clear on where I am right now? How do I get really, really clear on where I want to go in a reasonable time frame? Let's say 1 to 3 years. And then how do I break that journey down into smaller chunks so that I will at least start on something today that seems manageable? So I could be at 250 pounds and say, I want to be at 190 and I want to be at 10% body fat and I want to be at all of these things. Or a better way to say that is, I am 190 pounds. I am at 10% body fat and I do the things and have the habits in my life of somebody that's like that. So when you say those things, then you start doing the things that are required. You start discovering the diet that you need to have. You start discovering the fitness routines, and you do it one thing at a time. It's habit stacking. It's Atomic Habits. Those are 2 great books about this topic. But habits only work, which is actually the next framework. It's the disciplines framework. Disciplines framework is number 3. And that's basically the things that you need to be doing every day in order to achieve those results. Right? So whether it's mindset, for mindset, it's probably meditation or prayer and reading and spirituality and those types of things. For your business, it's probably marketing and sales and operations and whatever it is, right? So each one of those categories is going to have certain disciplines and things that you should probably perform every single day. So the 3rd framework is your disciplines. And then the 4th framework is your focus. That's the domino disciplines idea that I talked about. You need to focus on the thing that's going to get you the biggest results, because I could go to the gym all I want, but if I'm eating a pizza every night and drinking 6 beers, I'm not going to lose weight. So there's one thing that's bigger than the rest. If I'm diabetic, I probably need to cut out sugar, or whatever it is. There's something in my life that is holding me back from achieving the results, and I only need to focus on the one small thing. Gary Keller said it the best in his book called The One Thing, which he said, what's the one thing I can do right now such that everything else will be easier or unnecessary? He calls that the focusing question, which I love. I try and say, what's the one domino I can knock down right now that's going to knock down more dominoes?
Yeah.
Right. So the 4th framework was your domino. And the 5th one is actually the one I added today, which was the discipleship principle. The discipleship principle is this. I've had mentors along the way, people that have taught me, people that have trained me, people that have done that. And it's actually my requirement as well to do the same thing for other people, because I'll receive a lot of positive emotion when I serve and when I help others with things that I've gone through. So I have people that I learn from. So every coach has coaches, and every person is a coach or a leader to other people. So having that, looking at the hierarchy through time, every single person that was great learned it from somebody. Every single person that was great taught it to people. They wrote books, they created mentorship, they created all of those things. And in that, they found their meaning. In that, they found their purpose. In discipleship and the service of others is where we find the greatest amount of positive emotion and happiness and spirituality and contentment and joy and love and all the things that we want in our life. So being a selfish fucker is not going to get me what I want in life. But when I do it from a state of service, when I want to make money because I know that that money is actually, I don't call it money anymore. I call it resource, because it's the resource that I use in order to create the results and the service that I need in the future. You know, in Christianity, a lot of times they love to talk about poverty being a thing, or like you can't be rich and do all these things, or you can't charge for your services, or you can't blah, 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 blah. Right. Well, if I'm sitting here today and I'm making $5,000 a month versus sitting here today and making $50,000 a month, which one can make more impact in the world if I'm living with on purpose, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, the person that makes more. People love to like chastise Joel Osteen and all these like mega church pastors because they make so much money and have a nice house. I'm like, dude, that guy worked for it. He did the disciplines, he did the habits, he like sacrificed so much in his life in order to get that. And it's not even about that for him. It's about him being able to wake up in this mindset and the state that he needs to in order to continue to create and to continue to create results for people in their lives.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So those are the 5 frameworks that I actually teach people. And it's actually the things like, I don't know if you can find a personal development book or anything like that that doesn't fall into one of those categories.
Yeah, that's, yeah, I can't. I've had my phase of going through all the personal development books, and they all follow similar frameworks for sure.
The craziest part about it, though, that I realized is that none of them work without the other ones.
And why do you think that
Discipline,
do you think that
if you don't know where you're aiming, and if you don't have the right mindset, then you're just not going to do it. And if you're not focusing on the big thing first, like you need all of them. So when I help people build out, because I kind of coach coaches as part of what I do, when I help them build it out, I help them build content and structure in each one of these categories, because each one of these categories is what you need in order to create real results for people in their lives. So if you're only focusing on one, it'll kind of work, assuming that the people that you're teaching already have some of the other stuff figured out.
Interesting. It's I've got sort of an abstract theme that I'm noticing that I'll try to articulate, but it might take me a sec to get there. But the core what I'm trying to get at is that goals don't exist in a vacuum, and I think this is a theme that you keep kind of bringing up, where there's consequences or the journey towards the goal is that's where the mustard is, it's, and like I remember I read some book that I forget, it was Think Like a Monk or Be Like something like that, but it's so there's a guy, and he goes to India to learn Buddhism. He does that whole thing. He shows up, and he's there with a monk, and he expresses to the monk that he wants to become enlightened. And the monk says, "Do you want to be enlightened, or do you want to become enlightened?" Because there's a difference, like to be enlightened, it's the journey. Like, to be enlightened is one thing, but really to become enlightened is what people who are enlightened have gone through, and that's the mindset they've had. They've gone through, expecting the trials and tribulations, not just the pot of gold at the end, the feeling of enlightenment. And because of that, they've actually been able to achieve enlightenment. And it seems like that's kind of what you're saying. Like, you thought it early on in your career, you wanted that 83 to 333 per month, the $1 million per year. That was your pot of gold at the end. But really, that's not what you wanted to be rich like that, but you didn't want to become rich. And you found that out by actually becoming rich and realizing that the journey there wasn't what you were looking for. So I don't know. That's the theme that it seems recurring with everything you're saying, going back from your timeline to kind of these frameworks that you're using presently.
So I think what I hear you trying to say, and the point that I hear you trying to get across, is that when we look at these goals, right, when you set your intentions towards some sort of future state or some sort of future ideal that you want, a lot of times when we look at that and when we look at the insurmountable mountain that we have to climb, we're going to end up feeling frustrated or feeling insecure or feeling depressed or like upset that we're not where we need to be, right? Or where we want to be. I'm not there. I'm not this. I want that in my life, right? And the thing that we negate is looking at where we are now and looking back into the past at how far we've come. Because I've heard it said that, when we look forward at these things, we tend to feel shameful that we're not there already, right? Like, I've heard people say this like this, man, I'm so pissed off that it took me so long to figure this out. I'm like, why? You are right where you are right now, and everything's okay. Everything's good. You have to be here in the present moment. I actually think that that's a big message in most theology or most spirituality as well, is understanding that you have to be here right now in the moment. and understand that your journey, your character that you're building right now is just one small step of this beautiful line of time that we call our lives. And that's a journey. And no matter what, we're going to run into crap that we don't like. And we're going to run into trials. We're going to run into dragons that we have to slay. It's the reason we love dragon stories. It's the reason we love Disney and all these movies that have these types of journeys, is because we all experience it. We all have to face dragons in our life. But the biggest challenge becomes when you face dragons and you think that you shouldn't.
Yeah. And
you think, oh man, why me? Why am I facing this dragon? Why is this thing happening to me? Why is all of this like, it's like, or you could think, oh man, here's an opportunity for me to grow. Here's an opportunity for me to create something. Here's an opportunity to show people my character. Here's an opportunity for excitement and happiness and abundance in my life. Or how can I make the best out of this situation right now? Mm-hmm. I've actually seen these kinds of mindsets and things like that have people heal miraculously when they just accept and let go and live in the now and live here. And that's kind of what I was talking about earlier, where the kingdom of heaven is something that's available right now. It's not tomorrow and it's not yesterday. It's right here already. The kingdom of heaven is among us. Or you can call it enlightenment. You can call it spirituality. You can call it abundant joy. You can call it the universe, whatever you want to call it. It is a state of contentment being here right where we are in a joyful state, regardless of the storms that are happening around us. And that's all part of the journey that we're going on, because we've all seen, or like, how much would you love to be going through a storm and just sitting there like a monk? And it's funny because the book you were talking about was Jay Shetty, Think Like a Monk, and I just finished it this morning.
I read it a little while ago. That was a good one.
Yeah, it was very good. A lot of stuff that comes from that. But what I hear you saying is that the journey is the most important thing. And when we look at our life's journey, like, how can I get on a podcast and let somebody know that when I was 29 years old, I found Jesus in jail? Like one of the most shameful moments of my life, or it could be shameful. Brene Brown talks about this, that the difference between guilt and shame is I am this person. Guilt is I did something bad. Mm-hmm. And like, I don't even really feel like, I mean, yes, I should still feel guilty about the things that led me to that place. But at the end of the day, that's not who I am, because I changed who I am. And we have an opportunity every single day in our journey to do that, to change who we are, to change our story, to change our beliefs, to change into a more beautiful state.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree. I really, one of my personal beliefs is that growth is proportional to discomfort overcome, which is, I mean, you're pretty much saying the same thing in different words here. And I like there's no shortcuts, you know. It's like, and I'm into nutrition. It's one of my personal things, but like, if there's something that tastes sweet and it says there's no sugar in it, like it's, there's no shortcuts, you know. It might have stevia or monk fruit or, you know, one of these things, or even something worse, you know, but they'll mess up your microbiome. You know, I'm kind of nerd out on that stuff. If it tastes sweet, there's something sweet in it, you know, and it'll be enjoyable in the moment, but there's no shortcuts. It doesn't exist in a vacuum. It has repercussions. Yeah,
I read something recently just to comment on that, because like I've always kind of been on the sugar train, meaning like I'd rather have sugar I'd rather have a full soda than a diet soda if I'm going to do that.
Yeah, it's better, in my opinion, from what I know.
Yeah, like most of the people that I've met that are diabetic drink Diet Coke. I don't know why this is a thing, and it's just a thing. It messes with your system. It messes with your hormones. It messes with all that kind of stuff. It's not a shortcut. It might give you a little bit fewer calories right now, but you're going to pay for it later. Yeah, it's that's kind of what it is. We try and take these shortcuts to not deal with our suffering, and at the end of the day, it doesn't go away. It just delays.
Exactly. Yeah.
And there's just one thing that I looked at recently, that when it comes to a lot of these disciplines, 98% of the way there is way harder than 100%. Meaning, like, I don't drink in my life anymore. I haven't in probably 120 days now. I started at the beginning of the summer. I also stopped smoking weed at that time, and my life has changed dramatically. And it's not like, oh, I can smoke when I go to concerts, or when I do this, or when I do that, or I can have a drink here, or I can have a glass of wine with dinner. It's, I don't do it. And then that makes the decision easy, because I don't have to fumble around in my brain back and forth and let the little monkeys have their voice. Mm-hmm. and say, well, this is one of those times that you're okay to kind of skate on your habits. This is one of those times that it's okay. Right.
Exactly. And the flip side of that too is like willpower is finite. So if you're using your willpower to debate whether or not you're going to smoke a joint right now, then you're not going to have that willpower later when it comes to sitting down and, you know, forcing yourself to get done those emails that you have to do or whatever like that.
Yeah, I love that. I don't love the emails. I barely even like check my email anymore. Right?
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, when you have to do something later, and well, actually, it might be good.
So you have to do something later and decide that you're going to go to the gym and follow through on your habits and live in integrity with the things that you said you're going to do. But earlier, you decided to be out of an integrity in one area, and that's going to just create a cascading effect. It's like a negative domino, right? So I guess yeah, there are positive dominoes and there are negative dominoes that will cascade. So what's the one thing I'm going to do right now that's going to make everything else not work?
Yeah, it's a feedback loop either way, positive feedback loop, but it's it can be towards a negative or a positive objective.
Yeah, for sure. I
feel
like this has been good so far.
Yeah, I feel like we're getting into some stuff. I did want to circle back a little bit, and I mean, don't only go as deep as you want to go, but something you brought up in the beginning, your brother who passed away. I don't know. I've never gone through something like that, and a lot of your story I can relate to. I've had my crazy days. I was married and divorced after 3 years, so I think I've done some of the soul searching that you're going through. I'm currently kind of building my own framework. You have your 5 categories. Mine is and this was actually this was the first framework you discussed with 5 categories, but mine is mind, body, soul, and wallet. Sort of the way I balance my personal priorities. So anyways, I can relate to a lot of it, but I had a friend pass away, but I never had a family member pass away. And, even my friend, by the time he passed, I'd kind of fallen out of touch with him. So what was that like? And how did that, you said that influenced kind of your ages 14 through 29. Like, yeah, how did that little stone in the river alter your course?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's way more than we have time for right now, but also the way that I like to say it, or the way that I've integrated with a lot of it, is that I fell into nihilism, which I actually think the world suffers from today. Meaning that nihilism, and a lot of people like to throw that word out, but it's basically the idea that life is meaningless and it's meant to be a good time and you're meant to party and just enjoy life to its fullest. I live life to its fullest. That's the kind of thing. I live life, but I don't live life to its fullest. I live life to the fullest meaning. Right, towards the fullest purpose, aiming at the highest good, right? It's not just living life to the fullest, getting drunk all the time, hanging out, partying, trying to do all these things, right? So, I used to wear it as a badge of honor on my sleeve, like, oh, I'm going to like live life, I'm a party, and I'm probably going to die when I'm 45. And now I'm in a place where I'm like, I want to live forever because I have stuff I have to do. I have people I need to affect. I have a mission. I have a purpose that I have to be here for. So I need to be as healthy as possible. So that's actually what creates a lot of the meaning. It's the aim for me. Right. So, I mean, I guess I keep reverting back to that, but I mean, it was really freaking hard. This is really the answer. I don't remember about a year of my life. I don't remember about 2 years of my life before then. I definitely had PTSD. I struggled with anxiety and a lot of shame around it, even though it was a car accident. It had nothing to do with me. So I was the middle of 3 boys in the youngest section. So we were the only ones that were left at home, and he was my older brother. I looked up to him in every way. So, I did all the things in my life that helped me kind of reconnect or try and make sense of that experience. And it took me a really, really long time to do that, to make sense of it, to have it have meaning in my life. Right. To have it, there be something greater than that. One of the other things that I think came from it was the idea that, smaller problems don't actually affect me that much. Meaning that when, people would get really upset about somebody cutting them off in traffic or whatever the small thing is. And I'm like, dude, people would die. It's actually the only person that's close to me in my life that's ever passed away still to this day. But, I mean, when you're 14 years old and you have to face the existentialism of life and death and the fact that we're only here for a limited period of time, that is a big dragon to slay. Yeah. And, it
What was your
created a
attitude?
level of character.
What was your attitude
What was
towards?
my attitude?
Yeah, we were talking earlier about your attitude towards facing those dragons. So at the time, were you like, why me? Why is this dragon? Why me? Or was it like, all right, this is a battle to test myself? What was kind of your approach?
I said, fuck it, I'm gonna go get drunk.
Run away from the dragon, hide in the corner.
Pretty much run away from the dragon and go to the bar.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to face this. I'm not going to try and do this. I'm not going to go see a counselor. My parents tried to get me to go see a counselor, and I sat there and I didn't say anything. I sat there like this.
Yeah.
I'm crossing my arms right now if you're listening to this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just sat there. I didn't do anything. I didn't want help. I didn't want to talk to anybody. I just wanted to go and drink and party and all those things. And the crazy part is when I was saying that, like, I would do anything that I could to try and connect with him. You know, he was not necessarily the greatest influence on me. I had my first drink with him. I smoked my first cigarette with him. You know, like I smoked my first joint with him and all that kind of stuff. I thought he was so cool. And the crazy part is this happening between my freshman and sophomore year of high school in a small town in northern Michigan. You go back to school that fall and nobody knows how to treat you. You're the kid whose brother just died. You're the kid who like won't talk to anybody. You're in a state of darkness and nobody knows how to handle that. So they just don't. So I then felt like an exile in my own school with my own friends groups and all that. I thought it ruined my entire education. I stopped playing sports. I stopped doing anything. And the people that I did choose to spend time with were the people that were his friends, because at least they knew what I was going through. At least they could connect on the same level because they lost a friend too.
Yeah.
And they just happened to be people that would, you know, I'd skip school and drink a fifth of vodka with and take Klonopins. It's great. It wasn't great. I mean, luckily, like I'm actually about to get a tattoo on my arm with like a silhouette of a person with a veil around him, kind of going through what I call the valley of shadow of death. And the reason for that is that I know through this entire time I was being protected for a purpose. I was being protected from any of these things. I still was highly productive. I still went to school. I got good grades in college. I didn't do well in high school because I thought it was meaningless. But when I went to college, I knew it was my ticket out. I knew it was the thing that I had to do. So I did really well in college. I did really well in my engineering degree. I always worked really hard. I always got the things and the responsibilities and the disciplines that I needed to get done in life. Thank God that I never got into like tremendous trouble or tremendous things or die or whatever could happen when you go in down those paths. Like so many people turn these days to other types of substances like painkillers, et cetera, that end up addicted and it ruins the rest of their life. And that was something that always made me deathly ill and sick. So like there was always a protection around me. I know it, but I didn't see it at the time. I didn't know what it was. I just always knew I was going to do something. That's a hard way to, you know, again, it's a hard thing to describe in, you know, even an hour. This is years and years in personal development work.
Yeah, and I just kind of wanted a little window into it. Just and honestly, when you brought it up in the beginning, I wasn't surprised, and I think I could like you said, like I know a few people who've had deaths, you know, especially early on in their lives, and what you were saying about how people like it's hard to relate, like when you go back to school and everyone's like, oh, that's you know, that's and then also kind of like how nothing seems like a big deal if you've had someone close pass away. And I remember when my friend passed, and we were close, but not by the time he died. But it was the same thing, and I went through a phase, and it was probably to a smaller degree since we weren't as close. But nothing seemed to matter, you know. And you can kind of tell when a person has that affect. I think that's
something. I think that's actually an important lesson in life as well. The ancient Stoic philosophers, Seneca and them, have a saying called "memento mori." If you've studied any Ryan Holiday or any of his stuff, but memento mori basically means remember death, meaning that when you're going through things in life or when you're going through trials and struggling, remember that you could always die. Remember that people around you are always going to die. Remember that on a long enough timeline, every relationship that we create in our lives, either we're going to leave the person or the person's going to leave us on a long enough timeline. Now, does that make it not worth it? No, that makes it existentially more worth it.
It's the only reason
existentially more worth the time, more worth the relationships, more worth the impact, more worth all of it. Because if we can take any moment to serve another person in this life where we're remembering that every single person we ever run into is either going to leave us or we're going to leave them, then that creates a level of service and compassion and empathy that you're going to have for the people that are around you in the world. Yeah. Because remember that they could just not be there tomorrow. Now you could you could have the choice of doing that in one of two ways. You could say, oh, this person's eventually going to leave me. I'm eventually going to be abandoned. So I'm going to run and not lean into these relationships at all, which is what some people do. That's actually what I did for a while. Or you could lean more into them and understand that I'm going to cherish every moment that I have. I am going to come forward with the most love and compassion for every human being in my life. And I actually think that's the message of how to create a lot of meaning. I was finishing that book this morning. I was talking about service and how in service to others is where we find service to ourselves. But is service selfish? No, it's not. I mean, it can be kind of viewed as selfish because at the end of the day, when we serve others, we actually get the most benefit out of it ourselves. Right. But yeah, I think that's kind of a thing that came from it is remember that the people that are in your life are going to die. And that might be a morbid viewpoint, but I think it's something more people need to remember.
I think so too. And I think our modern society is very sheltered from death. You know, like I don't know if I've seen like a real dead person that wasn't like embalmed and, you know, I've never like just seen like a, you know, dead body. So I think throughout most of human history, you see dead people just be part of life, the way it is in the wild, you know. So I think that's kind of strange. And one more thing that I just keep thinking of as you're talking, I keep forgetting to mention it, but I really think in life, what you have is what you feel and what you remember. And so it's like what you feel is like your part being in the moment, you know, and that's being in tune, understanding what's important to you in the whole scope of your life and how this current moment pertains to that. And then what you remember is sort of an accumulation of those moments over time. And I think that relates to what you were saying earlier on about getting lost in the future and the downfalls of that. Because that's not creating moments or remembering previous moments. That's you know, living in La La Land.
Well, I think there's still a level of excitement about the future and possibility and openness and all of that we have and live in the moment. So yeah, I've actually been told that I live in La La Land by my ex-wife. It was great. But
I'm on a nerve movie.
Yeah, right. And hopefully she doesn't listen to this. She might, though. I don't really care. But I mean, yeah, she accused me of living in a place of like, oh, you're just pretending about what the future's gonna be. I'm like, no, I'm certain that this is the future that's coming for me, and I'm choosing to live in gratitude of that right now. It's the gratitude that comes from it. So I actually think,
but I think that's more. It's like what I'm trying to say is thinking that you deserve something and that it will come to you in the future is different than like understanding how your goals for the future, like what you need to do in today. So that's, you know, if I'm like this podcast, you know, this is a small little domino in the whole chain of dominoes in my life. And I believe that this podcast is helping, you know, knock over the next domino I need to knock over towards my goals. So I feel good in this moment, you know, I'm able to consider the future in these moments as we're having this conversation. Whereas if I was just sitting on my phone thinking about how nice it would be to create content that people liked, you know, that's kind of the La La Land that I'm talking about that I want to try to report.
Yeah. I mean, it totally, so the difference between goals and dreams is having a plan, right? And actually executing on that plan, going through on that plan on a day-to-day basis. So you're living in La La Land if you're not being the person that can create those dreams. Or if you're not being the person, if you're not doing the habits or doing the disciplines or at least doing something every day to move you forward towards that desired result. But we think that, you know, a lot of people think that there's slavery in discipline, right? Like, how can I possibly do all these things every day? How can I possibly live a life where I'm meditating and where I'm journaling and where I'm, you know, praying every day and reading every day and doing my fitness routines and leaning into my family obligations and leaning into like, how can I possibly do that? It's slavery. And I'm like, well, it kind of is, but like we talked about earlier with the decision fatigue, right? Like when you've made a decision that this is just the discipline you do, it just becomes part of who you are. And when it becomes part of who you are, it's easy because it just is it's just what you do. It's not difficult. And there's actually a lot of freedom in that. Where the slavery comes in is when I'm trying to think of what I'm supposed to do every day and thinking through this every single time and every single decision that I have to make, that I end up not making any decisions and watching Netflix.
Exactly.
Because where we turn to in indecision is sedation. And I don't know if it's food or alcohol or weed or drugs or Netflix or social media or what it is. We all have our own things.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, when we have decision fatigue, the easiest thing to do is turn to sedation. And I like what you said, because it really is like our life is a amalgamation of the journey that we've been on, the journey we're about to embark upon, and where we are right now, past, present, and future. But it's a lot of times it's like, how do I integrate where I am right now with everything I've been through and apply meaning on it, so I can be called to action towards some sort of future result that I desire to achieve, not just for myself, but for others.
Yeah, I totally agree. So, yeah. All right, there's two more things. We're coming up on time here, but there's a couple more things I wanted to ask. The last one I'll ask is, I'm curious exactly where you're at and where you're trying to go. Like, you've alluded to it a lot of times, but I'm just curious, what does your current life look like, and what are you building towards? But before that, before we get into that, I kind of want to end on that. Before that, just sort of a more pragmatic question is just your routines. Like, you're obviously someone, you've read a lot of self-help books. I'm sure you've intentionally tried a lot of different agenda management systems, task management, daily scheduling strategies. So how do you manage your responsibilities? And how do you set your schedule, and just how do you organize your habits, all that? What's your productivity system?
Yeah, good question. So a lot of it's still a work in progress, but generally for fitness, my fitness routines, I'm a little bit of a maniac when it comes to these things. I do 3 to 4 days a week of strength training, and I do 3 to 4 days a week of CrossFit, depending on what it is. So usually I'm working out about 6 days a week. I was a little bit out of my habits the last couple of weeks because I kind of had to flee a hurricane and moved across the country, but I'm back on it now. So I really enjoy CrossFit because it's one of those things that I just show up for and do whatever the workout is. I don't have to think about it, which is awesome. So I do those kinds of things. I do a lot of self-care routines as well. Like, I love to go in the sauna. I do a float tank experience at least once a week, which is like one of those sensory deprivation tank things, which is awesome. I journal every single day. I make sure that I'm very, very intentional about leaning into 2 people that I really care about, 2 relationships, whether it's a text message or something like that every single day, just to let them know that I care about them or give them a touch point, if you will, without expecting anything in return. I read 10 pages of a book at least every single day. Drink a gallon of water every single day. My diet is basically a program called Renaissance Periodization, but layman's terms, I watch my macros of what I eat, how much protein, fat, and carbs are in every meal, and then I time that based on when I train. And that's a super, super advanced one. So it's kind of like calorie counting on steroids, if you will. But that's really, really worked for me to have the body composition that I want. So I break these things down into those different categories. So I have fitness, I have family, I have fortune. So in business, and we'll talk about what those goals are separately, because that was your other question. But for fun, I try and make sure that like we go on date night once a week. And then I'm doing something for fun for myself every single week, something that I just really enjoy, whether it's a hike or going on a long walk on the beach. Now that I live close to the beach, it used to be a hike, or whatever it is. I just try and make sure that I'm getting check boxes in these categories, either weekly, monthly, yearly, or anything like that. Right. Like, so when everybody loves to say, I'm going to go on this vacation next year. I'm like, well, what's to keep you from going on a 3-day Airbnb adventure down the road from you where there are mountains? Because we all live near something that's beautiful. You live in Maryland, so you're 2 hours away from Shenandoah, right? Like, there's beauty in this world around us so close that we don't have to set these impossible targets or these impossible things to start experiencing these things right now. So I live a very disciplined lifestyle. And like, I'm just consistently working towards those goals. I think that might have answered your question.
Just like, is it sort of free flowing? Do you just sort of like have a journal habit that you just do every day, or do you have a checklist, or do you track it, or do you just?
So I track it. So there are a few different places. I'm still trying to set up systems, but I actually just use paper. Well, this is called a Remarkable tablet. It's like it's more expensive than
one of those.
A lot of people have, but I track it on there. And then some of my habits, I use a program called 75 Hard that I just went through this summer. It's the reason I stopped drinking and stopped smoking weed. And that tracks about 5 disciplines every day, actually 8 disciplines every day. And then I have another tool that I use through a coaching program that tracks some of the things. So I have tons of different systems. The one thing when it comes to systems for people is just find something that works for you, right? Like it's different for every person. People used to ask me in business, what's the best project management software to use? And that's kind of like what your question is, what's the best system to use? It's like whatever you're going to do. Like, don't get caught up in the system and just do the things. I don't care. It doesn't matter. Create a list for yourself and then say, I am non-negotiable going to follow through on this list every single day. Whatever works for you. And over time, what's that?
Write it on your hands.
Yeah, write it on your hand. Write it, tattoo it on your arm. I don't care. Like, probably not tattoo it on your arm. Don't do that. Disclaimer, you can't sue me if you do that. But yeah, there's no set system. Checklist. I recently bought a book. I haven't read it yet, but it's called The Checklist Manifesto. It was recommended in Tim Ferriss' book, Tools of the Titans. So I was like, oh, that sounds cool. So checklists. Just use a checklist at the bare minimum. And over time, you'll find other programs that work for you.
Cool. That'll make sense. And then that last question for you. And also as part of this, I'm just like, try to include information on how to find like your website or your social media. I'm just like, yeah, what are you doing? What are you working on? What are you trying to build towards?
Yeah. So right now I have a few different goals of what I'm trying to create or not trying, but what I am creating for myself. I just launched a new mastermind program called Move to Meaning, which helps business owners and frustrated business owners move their lives towards applying more meaning in their lives. In addition to that, I'm doing one-on-one coaching and training with high-level entrepreneurs and salespeople, helping people achieve or create offers that actually create impact in people's lives. A lot of it comes down to messaging and actually knowing what to create or knowing how to create it. So like in marketing and sales, a lot of people love to teach you like the tactical, here's how you build your website, or here's how you build your funnel, here's how you build those things. But what they don't teach you or what they don't know how to teach you is what to actually build on the back end to create transformational results for the clients that you work with, which is the same thing that we've been talking about here, how to create transformational results in people's lives, right? So there's a science and there's a technology behind it, but we all have a certain person that we're meant and here to serve, right? And a lot of times I touched on this earlier, but we're typically here to serve a past version of ourselves. So now my girl and I, also business partner, her name's Mia Shark, we're partnering to actually help distressed business owners and work with distressed business owners. Either we buy their businesses or we take them over or we consult with them or I coach them on how to build systems and processes. I'm actually in the sales and marketing space. She's more in the business and operations space. She's absolutely crushes it. So this is something that we are currently doing, and it is achieving massive results for our clients. So I coach coaches. I help people get out of production. I help business owners that are overworked, overproducing, that haven't created systems, haven't actually started to live the ideal lifestyle, get out of that, because that's where I was at one point. So again, going back to coach that past version of myself and show them without the 2 or 3 year journey of a lot of crap and that I had to go through, how to do it without burning your business down, is a pretty valuable thing.
Yeah, the meta program.
Right. So the best way to connect with me is on Instagram. And then I have a link tree there that goes to whatever I'm doing at the time. But the best way, like if you want to connect with me, I answer all my own messages. I believe in relational marketing, meaning that I don't like robots. I don't like funnels. I actually don't have a funnel. I don't have a website. I just have my Instagram. And you go on there, you message me, you're actually going to be talking to me. And it's at Josh Jurkovich. So JoshJurkovich at Josh Jurkovich on Instagram or Facebook. Facebook works too, but most people like Instagram better these days. So that's the best way to connect with me.
Gotcha. And I can attest to that as someone who hit you up on Instagram to come on my podcast. So,
yeah, there you go.
Yeah, you do respond. Awesome. Well, I'll leave it at that. I don't want to, I think we covered a lot, and I don't want to just keep being a dead horse here, but
yeah, I just want to say thank you so much for having me on today. I really appreciate it. I think that you're going to continue to crush. I love the way that you ask questions, and that, if anybody else is listening to this, like it, share it, do what you can to get Jake out there, because this dude is incredible, and I think you are doing amazing things with your life already.
I appreciate that. I really do.
All right.
Awesome,
Thanks, man.
Yeah, thank you.